Good evening. It's the Lunar Observance Day here at Abhayagiri, and the community has been practicing together for about the past week now, beginning our formal winter retreat that we do every year. And this is quite a wonderful opportunity that we have every winter, just to really set aside all of our duties and responsibilities, and the monastery is closed to most of the activities and external events that we usually have during the rest of the year. So it's an opportunity really just to have a lot of time for our formal practice of meditation. Oftentimes during the year we may find ourselves getting busy at times, and it can be quite easy to, even living in the monastery, to be sometimes quite distracted by duties and different activities and things. So this period of time is really quite a wonderful opportunity just to really set things aside and be able to really go inwards and spend a lot of time really investigating the formal practice of meditation. And particularly this year, we have the opportunity to have quite a lot of time for solitude as well. We've been practicing together for this past week as part of kind of a group practice. So we've had quite structured days with walking and sitting meditation for the whole community. But over the next few months, we'll have quite a lot of opportunity for people just to have time at their own dwelling place in the forest, and the different monks and even the lay people staying here in the monastery as well, I believe, will all have a number of weeks where we can just spend all day by ourselves. And for many of us, that might be, the first time maybe we've had that experience. It's something that's incredibly valuable, just for being able to really start to develop the practice on a deeper level. And I've always found that these periods of retreat, where we really have a lot of time to reflect, and also a lot of time to be alone. For myself, it has always tended to bring things up in the mind that oftentimes don't come up normally. So we have the opportunity to really deepen the practice, and of course that involves working with a lot of perhaps deeper problems and deeper causes of suffering that we might not normally have the opportunity to look at. So I think for most of us, when we come to a meditation retreat like this, and especially the idea of having a lot of time for oneself to be able to spend as we wish, a lot of us are quite excited about that and really looking forward to it. But I think for many of us, the actual reality of solitude and having so much time to oneself oftentimes can be quite a bit different than we expected. We oftentimes have the feeling that the suffering that we experience during the day is caused by other people and other situations outside of ourselves. And even as monks, oftentimes we have the feeling like if I could just go away and live in the forest just by myself, and I didn't have any of these duties and responsibilities, and I didn't have to be around people, then I would just be really incredibly happy. And it's very easy to believe that. So we do have this opportunity to be able to see whether it's true. And I think for so many of us coming into this situation where we do have so much time, and we do have possibly weeks now to be alone and not really to see anyone, then so often the reality is we come face to face with some very heavy suffering that we haven't really been looking at, and maybe it hasn't really had the opportunity to come up most of the time. But when we're really just by ourselves in solitude, then we really don't have anything else to blame our suffering on other than ourselves and other than our own minds. So it becomes really obvious and apparent, where the suffering is really coming from. And the Buddha gave quite a wonderful simile. He said, suppose that there was an elephant, a very large elephant, and it found a lake of water in the forest, and then it would go into the lake, and being so big, its legs would reach the bottom of the lake, and standing there it would play in the water and it would bathe itself, and then having enjoyed itself, it would come out of the lake and then leave. And then a small rabbit or a cat would see the elephant doing that and think, oh, I'll do that too. I'll go and play in the water. So the rabbit or the cat would go and jump into the lake, but being so small, then their legs wouldn't touch the bottom, and they would either sink or float away. And the Buddha says this is like one who is not skilled in meditation, who goes into solitude. So the elephant in the simile is like one who is skilled in meditation. Then they're able to go into solitude and immerse themselves in it and really enjoy themselves. But the one who is not very skilled in meditation, they may see other people who are able to enjoy themselves in solitude, and they think that they're the same. But going into that situation, then they either sink or they float away. They sink into mental states of depression and various distress and boredom, or they float away into states of craving for the world, a restlessness. So I think for many of us, we tend to have this experience, reading about the great meditation masters and reading about how they were able to just go off and live by themselves and really immerse themselves in incredible happiness. And then we think that we'll do that too, but trying to immerse ourselves, then we tend to just sink or float away. And it's very common for people to face some very extreme emotions that will arise even within the first few days of solitude. And so often, the monks who, particularly like in a place like Thailand, if they go off to live by themselves, then usually they don't really last very long. After a number of weeks, then they can't really can't take it anymore. So coming to this place and wanting to spend these 3 months experiencing quite a lot of seclusion, and even during the periods where we're practicing as a group, then we may still have the same experience. Even with the group practice, although we're around other people and we have kind of a schedule, but still we don't really have that much going on. There's not really much duties and responsibilities, and we are still very secluded from the world. So it's very normal to have this experience of just sinking, floating away, being overwhelmed by various moods and defilements. So coming to this place then to spend this time, we have the opportunity to learn how to work with this. And it is something that, although most of us will find it very difficult, it's of course incredibly beneficial. It gives us the opportunity to really, I feel like, make a lot more progress if we're willing to be present with what arises. And it might be much more difficult than we're used to. Wherever we normally practice, even for the monks practicing in the monastery, we tend to experience this period of time as, for most of us, probably as a period of time which is more difficult than usual. So then, coming to learn how to work with these difficulties, then we have to use skillful means, and we have to investigate for ourselves what works for us, because so often we do try to practice like we're the elephant, but if we're not really the elephant, then we'll find that the things that work for the elephant maybe don't really work for us. So often we may find ourselves, particularly if we have time for ourselves and time up at our dwelling place, then if we run into obstacles that are overwhelming and that we can't find our way around, then it's perfectly fine to use other activities as well to learn how to work with our defilements. There are many other things that we can do in addition to formal meditation when we run into very strong mental states that we feel like we can't work through, and we feel overwhelmed by them. Even as monks, we have many other activities like chanting and studying, even things like sewing or kind of making our requisites. All of these kinds of activities are things that we can use, particularly in this kind of situation, trying to walk and sit as much as we can, but then also realizing that if we do run into really strong periods of suffering and we can't sit or walk through them, then we can use some other kind of activity which we're interested in, that is a wholesome activity that the mind is interested in, studying and chanting and the different kind of tasks and work tasks that we do sometimes, looking after the dwelling place and things like this. And of course, as we're doing those activities, then it's not it's not like just like an escape from the suffering. Our suffering is still present even with those activities, but we're kind of using those activities as maybe something to stand on, like in the simile of the rabbit or the cat, until it's able to really stand on its own. Then sometimes it needs something to kind of help it to stand on. But always, it's quite important that when we do any activities, we should always be focusing on the practice. So we should always be focusing on cultivating constant mindfulness of the body and learning to pay attention to the emotions that are present even when we're doing those activities, and still learning how to work with those emotions. So, in a way, the practice is still the same, but we're just using an external activity to kind of help us along. So then, coming to this practice and learning how to work with these defilements, then I think it's very much like it's very much like the weather outside. Say, like this last week, it has been very dark and rainy. We've been receiving quite incredible amounts of rain over the past week, and pretty much every day, has just been very dark and cloudy. And this is, very much what the mind is like for most people. And the defilements in the mind are like clouds, dark rain clouds that are always completely covering the sky, completely covering the surface of the mind. And as we practice, over time, perhaps over long periods of time, then there can be experiences where it's like it's like the clouds suddenly part for a moment and the sun is able to shine through. And maybe it only lasts for a moment, and then the clouds cover the sun again. But this is what our experience in the practice can be like. Maybe for a long time just having only dark mind states and learning how to work with those, then at some point we can start to experience brief moments of breaks in the clouds where we suddenly can start to experience real happiness and real joy in the practice of meditation. But oftentimes, in the beginning, these experiences are very short-lived, and it's like the sun kind of peeking out through the clouds. After a moment or two, maybe it's completely covered again, and maybe it's many days or weeks until we see the sun again. But this can really give us a lot of encouragement, just to know that the sun is actually there, just to know that there is happiness in the mind, the joy and the happiness that we're looking for. It does exist, but it's buried on the other side of all of our negative emotions. So the experience of the practice can be like gradually learning how to thin out the clouds and kind of wear away the clouds, so that over time those experiences of happiness arising starts to be more frequent and more it starts to last longer before it disappears. Over time, then, if we practice for a very long time, then maybe we can finally start to have the experience of having, long periods of sunny weather, long periods of real happiness. So then, in trying to work with these negative emotions in the mind, then the Buddha said there are these 5 main hindrances that we've heard of and that we've studied in ourselves: desire, anger, dullness, restlessness, and doubt. And of course, those are only 5 of the main hindrances, the main defilements that we experience. And of course, there's so many other emotions as well that maybe can fit under those main 5. So many other emotions that cause us suffering, things like depression and boredom, jealousy and arrogance, many other emotions that are also defilements of the mind. So, these things are all dark clouds in our minds, and it's only through learning how to remove those that we can have any hope of really experiencing real happiness. So the defilement of desire, then the Buddha said that one who is overcome by desire, craving, longing is like one who's in debt. And somebody who's in debt is not able to be at ease. They're in a state of lacking. They need something. They're not satisfied. It's like being overwhelmed by desire and longing. We're not able to be at ease. We're not able to be satisfied. So learning how to work with desire, then can we learn how to use mindfulness of the body and the breath to soothe that feeling of desire, working with the actual physical energy of desire. How do we keep the mind from being overwhelmed by it and from being shaken by it, and to prevent ourselves from being carried away by the thoughts of our desires? We're learning how to use the breath to calm and to soothe that energy, and at the same time contemplating the things that our desire tells us that are feeding this state of mind, questioning whether the things that we want really are as good as our mind tells us they are. Of course, when we investigate, we all have had the experience that the pleasant things in the world, they don't really give us pleasure for very long. The nature of our mind is that we easily become bored with things, and whatever we find that we enjoy, then we quickly become bored with it, and it's not satisfying to the mind. We have to look for something else. The desire is always lying to us, telling us that if we just have this object, this experience, then this will be a permanent source of happiness. So in addition to learning how to work with the energy, then we can be questioning these thoughts. And the defilement of anger, then the Buddha said that one who is overcome by anger is like one who has a disease. And we can imagine somebody with a horrible disease, like a skin disease or something that causes them just constant pain and suffering and dis-ease. Somebody has some kind of horrible skin disease and they have rashes and sores all over their body, then it would be impossible for them to ever be at ease. They would always be agitated. So this is like the the mind of anger is always agitated, not able to be at ease. So we can learn how to, in the same way, use the breath, use the awareness of the body to learn how to breathe through these sensations, learn how to calm this energy of anger, and at the same time we can question the things that our anger tells us, about other people or about other situations. Anger always tells us that the other people are completely bad, there's nothing good about them, and they're always like this. But of course, if we question that, we examine that, then we'll see that this is also not true. Certain people, they might do and say things to us that are not kind, but if we really look at that person, we'll see that they're not always that way. It very much depends on the mood they're in. And even for myself, I so often thinking back to people who really did hurt me, and who really did say or do very unskillful things to me. And when I really honestly look at them, I can remember times that all of them were kind to me, actually, which is not something that our anger wants us to acknowledge. Anger doesn't want us to realize that. So the defilement of dullness, then the Buddha said that one who is filled with dullness or sleepiness is like a prisoner. And a prisoner is someone who is trapped and confined in a small cell and has no freedom, doesn't have the freedom to go where they want to, has to spend all of their time in a small cell. And this is like the defilement of dullness, boredom, depression, laziness. It traps us in a small space that we can't escape from. And so much so that if it gets to very extreme levels, like extreme depression or laziness, then we almost can't even physically move. So it kind of boxes us in. We don't have the freedom to be able to enjoy the things we want to. So in the same way, learning how to work with this, with the mindfulness of the body, and in this case, learning how to use the sensations of solidity in the body, being grounded in the body, in order to not be swept away, overwhelmed by the looseness of the mind, the torpor of the mind. And also trying to find things that interest the mind, and that's really the natural antidote to dullness and torpor is like interest. We know that when we're doing something that we're interested in, then we have a lot of energy. We're enjoying ourselves. We really want to do that particular thing. So, finding things if there are different things that we can contemplate, if there are things that the mind enjoys thinking about or contemplating. If we're truly overwhelmed by dullness, we can do things like studying or chanting or other activities that we find that the mind is interested in. And being interested, then there will be natural energy that is arising. And the defilement of restlessness, agitation, worry, anxiety. The Buddha said one who's overwhelmed by this is like a slave. And, like the prisoner, the slave is somebody who doesn't have any freedom. They don't have the freedom to do what they want. They're in a state of dis-ease. They don't have the freedom really to enjoy themselves. And this is like our restlessness and our worry. We're slaves to these emotions. We have to worry about what our anxiety tells us to worry about. We have to think about the restless thoughts that arise. So we don't have the freedom to be at ease. So learning again how to use the body and the breath. How do we relax into that energy? How do we prevent the mind from being agitated and swept away? We can also contemplate the how maybe there isn't actually a point in our worrying and our restless thoughts. We always feel like we have to worry about certain things. We feel like it's a good thing to do. It's a necessary thing to do. But really questioning that, does it really help us? So often we find that worrying about things actually makes things go worse. And if we're able to just let go of that worry, then there's a sense of ease, and things are able to go so much better. So the last hindrance of doubt. And the Buddha said that one who's overwhelmed by doubt is like someone who is lost in the wilderness or in the desert, lost in the middle of a journey and not sure where to go. And someone who, if we've ever been lost, and I can remember now a time a couple of years ago where I was genuinely lost somewhere when I was in Thailand by myself, and it was quite a frightening and disorienting experience. This experience of doubt, real strong doubt, is like a very ungrounding experience. Quite filled with dis-ease. Not knowing what should I do. This feeling of complete dis-ease and not feeling secure. Feeling like we're unsure of the way to go. So in the same way, we can learn how to use the body and the breathing, working with the energy of doubt, learning how to set aside the endless thoughts that spin out in the mind. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Is this the right way? The more that we think about these things, then just the more the stronger the dis-ease becomes. So learning how to cut off these thoughts and learning how to just be present with the physical feeling of doubt, learning how to calm that energy, learning how to not be swept away by it. So the more that we are able to learn how to work with these emotions and learn how to prevent the mind from being so overwhelmed by them, learn how to wear away our habitual reactions to them, slowly we can learn how to wear away their power over us. And maybe at some point we can start to come to the experience of real happiness, like, the Buddha says, like one who was in debt but is able to pay off all of their loans and then has no more debt, would feel great happiness and joy. One who had a horrible disease but then was cured from it and was able to go where they wish and be completely at ease, would feel great happiness and joy. One who was a prisoner and was then released, able to go wherever they want to in the world, they would feel incredible joy. And one who was a slave and was then released from their slavery would feel incredible happiness. One who was lost in the wilderness but then found their way out would be filled with joy and happiness as well. So this can be our experience in the beginning, maybe for only short periods of time, but as the practice goes on, then this experience of real happiness and joy can become more and more our overall experience of life. So these are just a few reflections for the evening. Wish everyone a very enjoyable and fruitful winter retreat, and I'll offer that for reflection.